A Nightmare on Elm Street is a series that is very near and dear to me, and looking back, I think I can go ahead and firmly state it's the most central movie series from my childhood. I have a lot of fond memories with it, and even to this day I find myself searching for the next slasher series that will replace the Robert Englund-shaped void in my heart. I can remember being 11 years old and dressing up as Freddy Krueger with popsicle stick claws wrapped in tinfoil, and I can remember being in the front room of my grandma's house doing a marathon of the series like they were my Saturday morning cartoons. Needless to say, I have a lot of affection for the series, and so even in this review, although I'll be trying to look at things objectively in any way that I can, taking the nostalgic goggles off and looking at the series as if it were any other film, it will come with a certain bias that can't be prevented. Without further ado, here are my thoughts on the Nightmare on Elm Street series. A Nightmare on Elm Street is of course the film that started it all. Directed by creator the late great Wes Craven, the original film is oftentimes considered as the best film hands down. The film definitely has some of my favorite one-liners with a "This is God" line still enough to bring a smile to my face at any given moment. The film mostly plays itself straight, with the most campy 80s moment being the scene involving a car before the credits roll. In retrospect, as I watched the film, although there are a number of memorable moments, like the stairs giving way beneath Nancy's feet or Freddy's head pressing up against the wall, both accomplished in very creative, practical ways, the first film isn't nearly as great as how I remembered it. The development and portrayal of the characters isn't bad by any means, but the film itself never cranks up the tension or truly reaches the potential of its concept. This is because, plainly put, the concept is so fantastically brilliant, whereas the film itself doesn't subvert reality or build any momentum. I think I could escape most or all of my criticisms, but after watching the final encounter between Freddy and Nancy, which plays out like a slapstick scene from Home Alone, I feel like this is a film that was better in theory than in execution. Also, even since I was a little kid, I've always disliked the scene where Nancy overcomes Freddy Krueger by not fearing him. If fear is all it took to make him disappear, then why did he show up in the first place when she didn't know he existed? Even if there's an answer to that, and I'm sure there is, my opinion remains that this scene simply didn't close the film off in a visually appeasing way, and it's one that especially hasn't aged well. I've always remembered A Nightmare on Elm Street 2 as one of the worst films in the series. I never really investigated much as to why I thought that, but instead I oftentimes simply ignored the film altogether. For this video, I decided to rewatch the film once again as a way to better articulate my thoughts. And with that, I learned it's okay. The film isn't groundbreaking on any level, but it also isn't as bad as what I had myself believing for all these years. The film isn't nearly as memorable as the first film, but it does a couple of moments here and there that aren't so bad. More than the last film, I believe that Elm Street 2 embraces the campier, cheesy side that always reared its head in the 80s and 90s. This isn't the same deliberate way the films would embrace comedy in years to come, but rather some cringeworthy moments that simply could have been done in a more nuanced and effective manner. The film is known a lot for the gay themes that found their way into the film. In a documentary, it was confirmed that this was an intentional undertone, and not something that was merely coincidental. Unfortunately, though, the reason that it was often uncertain about whether it was deliberate is because it was undercooked and vaguely implemented. The main protagonist has a female love interest, and the film plays out as though they care for one another. Some lines and scenes in the film can be used as evidence to support certain ideas, but I think it's an idea that could have been cool, but was too underdeveloped to have any real effectiveness. The themes feel hidden, but not in a way that suggests subtlety, but in a way that makes it feel like the themes were hinted at, but never really given any payoff, like they changed their minds halfway through. Nevertheless, I think Elm Street 2 still has a charm to it that makes it very watchable to fans of the genre, and 80s horror fans that are looking for this type of over-the-top fare. Like the first film, I believe the film swallows its own tail and doesn't pay off itself in an effective way, going in a very bizarre, underwhelming, and anticlimactic route, and for that, I'd say it goes out with a more of a whimper than a bang. Call it a decent slasher film that doesn't really overachieve or completely sink. A Nightmare on Elm Street 3 Dream Warriors is held with warm regards by a lot of horror fanatics. I'll concur with the sentiment in regards to a lot of the special effects, which are over the top and fun. Dream Warriors definitely has a lot of fun in regards to some of the scenes, and thereby it feels like a highlight reel of Freddy Krueger being able to play around with his victims. Although at the same time, I would say that it represents the exact moment where the series jumps the gun as far as campy-related humor goes. I don't believe that the first two Elm Streets fully reached the potential that the concept had, but I feel like Dream Warriors takes large steps in the wrong direction. Their imaginative use of their resources, including the environment, is why I think a lot held this film as fondly as they did. The performances, for the most part, aren't bad, but it isn't as though there's any performances worth singling out on the positive side of the spectrum, whereas there are a few performances that feel otherwise jarring or overtly cliché. Their film requires a suspension of disbelief more than the first and second film, and from this moment forward, Freddy has been defanged, his own severity and threatening presence reduced to that of a novelty act, dosed with corny one-liners and a hammy performance by Robert Englund. Again, I'll reiterate how much the series meant to me when I was young and now, but looking at it objectively, it summarizes how the series reduced itself as it went on. I don't have any issues with Freddy Krueger dropping one-liners either. Not really. I love Englund in the role, and when he has a fiercer edge, I think it meshes really well. The issue I had with Dream Warriors, above all else, is that Freddy isn't an intimidating force in this film. New Line is long time connected with Warner Brothers, and thereby it only seems fitting that Freddy would be reduced to that of a Looney Tune. The scenes where his victims are seemingly in on the act are when the film stops resembling a horror comedy and becomes more like a joke in general. The scene with the wizard shooting thunderbolts stands as probably a series low point. These are my thoughts on the first three Nightmare on Elm Street films, and in summary, although I would consider Elm Street 3 below average in terms of effectiveness, I would consider Elm Street and A Nightmare on Elm Street 2 to be decent horror fare, bolstering terrific ideas that unfortunately aren't met. Even if I might have sounded cynical in regards to the films, I would like to pressure on the fact that I love the Freddy Krueger character, and although the execution of the concept in retrospect might be a little rougher around the edges than what nostalgia might have persuaded me into believing, the series has cemented a spot in my life, warts and all, and I will still look at it the same way that some looked at Power Rangers or Ninja Turtles as a kid, as strange as that may sound. With that being said, thanks for watching this video, and I'll be looking at 4, 5, and 6 shortly, with the third part sharing my thoughts on Wes Craven's New Nightmare, Freddy vs. Jason, and the remake. If you enjoyed this video, feel free to subscribe and support the channel. I'm also a writer with 3 of my novels available on Amazon for only 99 cents on Kindle if you'd like to check that out. It'd really mean a lot. Otherwise, though, that's really all I have. This has been Taking a Stab, and I'll see you next time.